Welcome to Healing Outside the Box. I'm Gene Tiberio, and I'm a nutritionist and a wellness coach. Today is part 2 of the episode, Why Are Cancer Rates Increasing at a Younger Age? Now, I don't pretend to know the answer, but my guess is that if we ever do find the answer, it will be complicated. I do feel strongly, though, that we should be talking about it, or at least thinking about it. If you haven't yet listened to part 1, it's only about 15 minutes long, so you may want to start there. But if you just want to get the gist of what I said, it's basically that experts are now saying 1/3 of all cancers can be prevented by lifestyle and dietary measures alone. And we can all guess what the dietary measures are. Too many sugar and fat calories, too few nutrient-dense foods, cured meats, and low fiber. In terms of ailments, diabetes, weight, and a lowered immune system are contributing factors. Being physically inactive is also a contributing factor. What surprises most people is that the bacteria in our gut may be linked to a risk of early onset cancer. Now, there was a huge article about this from the journal Nature, entitled, Is Early Onset Cancer an Emerging Global Epidemic? Like everyone else in the science community, they mentioned the usual risk factors, and most of the cancers they're mentioning are usually related to digestion. These guys also mentioned the microbiome and suggest that all of this could be related to epi-genetics as well. I'll put the link to that article in Nature in the show notes. Here's a quote from the Harvard Gazette's letter, and I'll put this in the notes as well. Quote, diet directly affects the microbiome composition, and eventually these changes can influence disease risk and outcomes. End quote. Not to be outdone, the NIH put out a large review article basically stating the same thing, that our diet influences the gut microorganisms, which have a huge role to play in how well we heal and resist the abnormal cell growth that results in cancer. I'll put the link to the NIH article in the show notes as well. So, how do we fix our microbiota to replace the bad bacteria with good bacteria? Well, here's a quote from the NIH article. Quote, a joint report by the World Cancer Research Fund and the American Institute for Cancer Research found convincing evidence that a high fruit and vegetable diet would reduce cancers of the mouth and pharynx, esophagus, lungs, stomach, colon, and rectum. Evidence of probable risk reduction is powerful for cancers of the larynx, pancreas, and bladder. End quote. We can certainly understand why fruits and vegetables, with all of their antioxidant and anti-inflammatory qualities, would reduce cancers related to digestion when they're in contact with food. But a probable reduction in bladder cancer is pretty remarkable. There are some specific examples in that article. Now, I'm taking this directly from the article. Quote, intake of flaxseed, especially its lignin fraction, may help reduce the risk of breast cancer. Lignin belongs to a group of compounds called polyphenols. Lignin is a bioactive compound which has been shown to have antioxidant, anti-inflammatory, and anti-cancer properties. In postmenopausal women, lignins can cause the body to produce less active forms of estrogen. That's what they basically mean by bioactive. It's not just fiber. This is believed to potentially reduce breast cancer risk. Flax seeds have the highest concentration of lignin, but sesame seeds and sunflower seeds have lignin as well. Here is another example. I got this from another source. Allium, which includes the family of onions, garlic, scallions, and cruciferous vegetables like broccoli and cabbage, are especially beneficial to fight cancer, with broccoli sprouts being the densest source of a substance called sulforaphane. I have a couple of podcast episodes on sulforaphane from broccoli and broccoli sprouts. It's 255 and 256 if you want to go back in the episode archives to listen to it. Now, broccoli sprouts have a high concentration of sulforaphane since this compound originates in the seed and does not necessarily increase in the plant as it grows. So one sprout contains all of the sulforaphane that is present in a whole bunch of broccoli. So obviously, if sulforaphane is especially cancer protective, it would seem reasonable to include some broccoli sprouts in an anti-cancer diet. There are some lesser protective compounds in a cancer prevention diet, and these include selenium, folic acid, and folic acid, by the way, is the same as folate. They can be used interchangeably. Vitamin B12, vitamin D, chlorophyll in the dark green leafy vegetables. There are also other antioxidants in a group called the carotenoids. Think carrots when you think about this group. So they're orange in color, or red in the case of tomatoes. So these would be beta-carotene, lycopene, which is high in tomatoes, lutein, and cryptoxanthan. Now, when it comes to the lesser nutrients like selenium, folate, and B12, they might not do much when they're adequate in the diet. But if you're deficient in these nutrients, you could have an increased risk of cancer. So the carotenoids, the orange vegetables related to vitamin A, are different in that they are more potent antioxidants, which means the more the better. By the way, beta-carotene in carrots is identical to vitamin A, in that beta-carotene is literally two vitamin A's hooked together. Carotene is the vegetable source of the vitamin. Vitamin C is also an antioxidant, but it's water-soluble. So if you take high doses, it will just get flushed out in the urine. The better deal is beta-carotene, or vitamin A. So how are we going to remember all of this? There is a physician by the name of Dr. Joel Fuhrman who came up with the term G-bombs to describe the antioxidants to consider. And so I'll just use that phrase because it makes sense. So here's what G-bombs stand for. G is for greens, leafy greens. B is for beans, and that includes dry beans, peas, lentils, garbanzo beans, all that. That whole group is called pulses. So that's what it means when you see that word. The O is onions, and that includes garlic, scallions, leeks, etc. M is for mushrooms, which have been getting a lot of attention. B is for berries, all kinds of berries. The deeper the color, the better. And S is for seeds. Let's break it down in more detail. G-bombs stand for the green leafies, and of course that's spinach, kale, broccoli, green beans, green peppers. The darker the better. In addition to the beta-carotene in the sulforaphane, you've got some xanthins, folate, lignin, and dietary fiber. There is probable evidence that it lowers your risk of breast cancer. But here is the deal with that. If you add up the probables with your other fruits, vegetables, beans, seeds, etc., it has an additive anti-cancer effect. So you add up the probables and you'll get convincing evidence. A lot of people think about doing green smoothies when they think about the leafy greens. But you can toss chopped fresh spinach into stir fries, soups. Frozen spinach gives you an easy but budget-friendly and nutritious option. Broccoli sprouts can be chopped up and put in soups and stir-fries, and plenty of other things. Just Google it according to what you like. If you like soups, Google broccoli soup, and you can pull different ingredients from different soups. And the evidence shows that when a diet is compiled according to the guidelines addressed in these studies, it is likely that there will be at least a 60 to 70% decrease in breast, colorectal, and prostate cancers, and maybe even a 40 to 50% decrease in lung cancers. Such a diet would be conducive to preventing cancer and would favor recovery from cancer as well when treatment starts. Several lab studies have shown that sulforaphane from broccoli and similar vegetables can significantly slow the development and progression of prostate cancer. So again, linked to hormones. Broccoli also has folate, flavonols, vitamin C, and of course fiber, as well as the beta-carotenoids. If you're cooking broccoli, it's usually better to saute it, microwave it, or stir-fry it to retain as many nutrients as possible. Now, the B, which stands for beans. These are a good source of fiber, polyphenols, anthocyanins, which are responsible for the black and black beans, and lignans. So obviously this includes chickpeas, which you can grind up to make hummus. You could mix beans with rice or orzo, and just about any of them do well with soups. Now the O, onions, garlic, chives, leeks, etc. They're in the allium family and have been used as medicinals for thousands of years. Their strong odors were meant to protect plants from predators, and those compounds also seem to protect the health of those predators, which is basically us. Onions and garlic have mild antiviral protective agents and possibly antibacterial, as well as the anti-inflammatory and antioxidant properties. And we all know what we could do with our onion and garlic, which is just about anything. Now, mushrooms. These are kind of my favorite nutrient to talk about. They're not plants, but basically fungi, and they're loaded with antioxidants, vitamins, and minerals. They provide valuable nutrients that aren't so common in many plants. These include a couple of antioxidants called ergothioneine and glutathione, which is not important to remember, just that they help boost our mood as well as improve our inflammation-fighting capability in our gut-brain axis. And I don't know if this is common knowledge, but our gut and our brain are very connected. According to the National Cancer Institute, mushrooms may also help prevent cancer of the lung, prostate, breast, and possibly other types of cancer. Just as a side note, I was once tutoring a woman who was studying for her registered dietitian exam. That's one of those 3-hour ordeals with 200 multiple choice questions. We were discussing the best sources of soluble B vitamins, and the question was, name the food with the highest B vitamin content of these 4 choices. The answer was mushrooms. I suspected it was going to be mushrooms, but when I looked at the data on the specific amounts, I thought to myself, holy cannoli, Batman. Mushrooms had about 4 or 5 times the amount of several B vitamins versus some of our better vegetables. It also has a decent amount of protein, and our common white button mushrooms are among the most potent cancer fighters. In addition, a group of mushrooms known as medicinal mushrooms are now being studied with great interest for potential as immune modulators. Now, I know you're thinking, sounds like magic mushrooms, but not necessarily. They're including a common white button mushroom. There will be more research on that in the future, no doubt. Mushrooms also contain a substance called choline, which has been shown to protect against prostate cancer. Okay, now to the second B, berries. When it comes to these fruits, the more colorful the better. When we think about berries, we normally think about blueberries, and of course they're great. But this also pertains to cherries, raspberries, blackberries, and red grapes. They have what's called anthocyanins. They also have flavonols, phenolic acids, flavones, obviously similar, and tannins. An example of a tannin is proanthocyanin. But I have to say, with the berries, organic really matters. If you can't afford the fresh, or you like cherries, but they have a short season, frozen berries will work as well. They have good nutrients, but the flavor isn't as good. Nothing like fresh berries in a smoothie. You can use any of these colorful frozen berries in a smoothie with yogurt and possibly a banana. Again, organic is best if you can afford it. Dried cherries are a good option. You can add them to cereal or salads, or you could sweeten a drink with any of these frozen fruit. They now have hand blenders, so you can crush the berries and mix it into your drinks. Now, when it comes to the colors, orange and yellow pigments are once again due to the carotenoids, which are potent anti-cancer compounds. Also lycopene, which as we know is present in tomatoes, which by the way is technically a fruit. And these blueberries, cherries, raspberries, and red grapes also have the flavonoids, which cause that red or purple pigment. That's due to anthocyanins, which are very beneficial. In general, when it comes to fresh fruits, there really should be no limit. And that goes for people with diabetes, provided they don't peel away the skin of the peach or apple. Now, S. S is for seeds. Seeds are wonderful if you're fighting to prevent or treat cancer, but for different reasons. Seeds contain a lot of something called tocopherols. Now, I know that's a strange sounding word. Remember that alpha tocopherol is simply vitamin E, like egg, which is important because it makes many essential compounds that we don't get from fruits and vegetables. In addition to vitamin D and phytosterols, seeds also contain vitamin B6, folate, which normally can run low in vegetarian diets, and polyphenols. They're also high in fiber and minerals like magnesium and manganese. Some seeds, as I've mentioned, like flaxseed or chia seeds, also contain omega-3 essential fatty acids, which aren't always easy to come by on a vegan diet. Seeds deliver many health benefits, including fighting cancer, stabilizing blood sugar, improving mood, and athletic performance. Flaxseed has the highest concentration of lignin. Sesame seeds and sunflower seeds do have lignin as well. As I've mentioned, lignin is a bioactive compound which has been shown to have antioxidant, anti-inflammatory, and anti-cancer properties. In postmenopausal women, lignins can cause the body to produce less active forms of estrogen. Okay, so there you have it. I know this was relatively boring with a lot of lists, but it's important to go through in detail. Just remember the G-bombs: greens, beans, onions, mushrooms, berries, and seeds, because all of those groups can help reduce your risk of cancer. And as I've mentioned, there's an additive effect. The more the better. I know this is going to sound harsh, but here goes. If you think organic fruits and vegetables are too expensive, and yes, they're expensive relative to, say, white rice, but it's nothing compared to the cost of being diagnosed with a disease, especially cancer, both in dollars and in stress, and in heartache. For example, I happen to be disabled, and the wheelchair I'm sitting in cost $12,000 out of my own pocket. And I certainly don't know how much it costs to have colorectal cancer, but I can only imagine that the pain and suffering alone is costly. And if the preventative medicine is a mixed berry smoothie with bananas and yogurt, how can that be a bad thing? And speaking of cost, if you want to reach out to me on how you can encourage your local politicians to expand the Healthy Incentives Program, which includes $40 of free local produce every month to everyone, I would be happy to help you get that going in your town. You can reach me on my contact page on my website, which is healingoutsidethebox.com. And remember, we can't be heard unless we speak up. That's all I have for you today. Be well and stay tuned next time for Healing Outside the Box.